Hi, it's Miss Pam from the Andes Public Library, and welcome to our story time. Thank you so much for joining us. It's Wednesday, December 23rd. It's almost Christmas. So, I have some special stories, two of which we wanted to do last week, but we didn't have time. I'm Not Santa by Jonathan Allen. It's about a special baby owl. And Christmas in the City by Loretta Krupinski. Now, these two stories are connected just because of what happened this year. Did you know that the Rockefeller Christmas tree came from our area, from Oneonta, but it had a little owl. It looked like a baby owl, but it was a wet owl. And it traveled all the way from the Catskills down to New York City, only to be rescued and then brought back. And then we're going to read The Night Before Christmas, written by Clement C. Moore, illustrated by Anita Lobo, a Victorian vision of the Christmas classic. And if we have time, we're going to do One Winter's Night by Leo and Diane Dillon, story by John Herman. All right, so let's find out about this baby owl. It was Christmas Eve, and Baby Owl had been out in the snowy woods playing with his sled. The woods are so quiet in winter, he thought as he trudged home. Santa, called Baby Hare. It's you. I'm not Santa, said Baby Owl. Don't be so silly. But you are Santa, insisted Baby Hare. You're wearing a red hat with fur on it. Santa wears a hat like that. But I'm not Santa, said Baby Owl. I'm an owl. You're big and fat like Santa's, cried Baby Hare. You are Santa. I am not Santa, said Baby Owl, and I am not big and fat like Santa. I am very fluffy like a baby owl. You are Santa, Baby Hare wailed. You got a sleigh. Santa's got a sleigh. I am not Santa, cried Baby Owl, and it's not a sleigh, it's a sled. Sleighs are much bigger, and I'm an owl. But you are Santa, said Baby Hare. You keep saying you're not, but you are. And Baby Hare started to cry. Wah! Please don't cry, Baby Hare, said Baby Owl. Wah! Howled Baby Hare. Oh, all right, cried Baby Owl. I am Santa. Okay, I'm Santa. Ho, ho, ho. Just stop crying, please. Baby Hare stopped crying. He looked at Baby Owl. You're not Santa, said Baby Hare. Santa's got a big beard, and he wears big black boots with fur around the top. Baby Hare started to cry again. You said you're Santa, but you're not, he wailed. Wah! Now Baby Owl was upset. I only said I was Santa to stop you from getting upset and crying, he wailed. And now you're crying again. It's not fair. Wah! And Baby Owl burst into tears. What's all this crying and carrying on, said a big jolly voice. And at Christmas time, too. Santa, cried Baby Hare. Santa, said Baby Owl. Now come and give me a big hug and let's have no more of this crying, laughed Santa. Mama, cried Baby Owl. Baby Hare thought I was Santa, but I'm not, and he started crying. And then I said I was Santa to stop him from crying, and he started crying again because he said I wasn't Santa. And then Santa came along and cheered us both up, and wasn't that wonderful? Yes, dear, said Mama. And now it's time for bed, Baby Owl. Here's your Christmas stocking, Baby Owl, said Mama, when she read him a story and tucked him in. We'll hang it at the end of the bed. Good night and sleep tight. Good night, Mama, said Baby Owl. Good night, Owlie, and Merry Christmas. Okay, so that is leading up to our Christmas in the City story by Loretta Krupinski. I remember one time, my first time to go visit the Rockefeller Christmas tree. And we walked, it was very cold, and we walked a few blocks over to the tree. I think it was right around the 23rd, and the tree wasn't lit at that moment, and I was so bummed out. I was like, oh, I walked all this way to see the Rockefeller tree up close, and because I'm from Ohio, I'm from the Midwest, and I'd never gotten to see that. And wouldn't you know, and it was right around midnight, and all of a sudden the whole tree just lit up just as we were getting ready to go. So that was my memory of the Rockefeller Christmas tree. New York City was preparing for Christmas. People rushed up and down the sidewalks from one corner to the next, carrying packages and gifts. Windows were decorated, wreaths were hung, and little twinkling lights were wrapped around the bare branches of trees, which glowed at night like blossoms. The tree rose tall and proud in Rockefeller Plaza. 8,000 lights sparkled like jewels from the top of the tree to the bottom. Christmas balls the size of grapefruit hung from its branches. Then, when the saws stopped buzzing, the car horns stopped honking, and the workmen's voices finally fell silent, 2 tiny mice peeked from a hole in the tree's trunk. "My dear, our home has now become a Christmas tree," said Mr. Mouse. "The biggest one of all," said Mrs. Mouse. Imagine that's what that owl thought, too. Hundreds of people looked back up at the tree while the mice watched the skaters below. They were country mice. The tree was their home. Now they found themselves at Rockefeller Center in the heart of New York City. After they had tidied up the furniture and gathered up the spilled seeds, Mrs. Mouse said, "Let's explore. I want to see everything." "Are you certain you're up to it?" asked Mr. Mouse. Mrs. Mouse was expecting babies. "You never know when the little ones will arrive," said Mrs. Mouse, "but now we're here in the big city. Come with me." With the slim crescent moon gleaming in the sky, the 2 mice walked hand in hand down now dark and deserted sidewalks. They looked in the store windows and paused in front of the one with Santa Claus in his workshop. It was so beautiful. Mr. Mouse put his arm around Mrs. Mouse. Not a squeak was spoken for fear it would break the spell. The next night, Mrs. Mouse spotted a toy store. "Wouldn't it be wonderful to live in a dollhouse like that instead of in a tree?" she sighed. "Good idea, Mrs. Mouse. We could use one of the rooms to store seeds and nuts," said Mr. Mouse. "And I could have a nursery for our babies," she added. On the way home, they found part of a pretzel and an apple core. "Here, stuff the apple seeds in your pockets," Mr. Mouse said, "and I'll carry this piece of bread. I'll race you across the ice rink back to the tree." They skimmed across the ice like 2 feathers being blown by the wind. By day they slept and dreamed. At night the rosy glow from the Christmas lights filled their room. They dined on seeds and planned their walks. "Tonight," said Mr. Mouse, "let's go see what's at the bottom of those stairs that go underground." "Oh, yes," said Mrs. Mouse. "Maybe we'll find some mouse friends." I don't know about that. Down the stairs and under the sidewalk they went. "I don't want to go too far," said Mrs. Mouse. "We don't know what's down here." But every corner was so well lit, they ventured out into a platform that ended at a dark tunnel. Then suddenly there was a great rumbling and shaking, a loud roar, and a light erupted from the tunnel. A train broke through the darkness towards them. The 2 mice scurried back up the stairs. "What was that?" exclaimed Mrs. Mouse. Mr. Mouse couldn't answer. He was out of breath. One night they discovered elegant horse-drawn carriages in front of a large wooded area. The horses pranced in place and shook their heads, eager to begin their journey back to the stable. Mrs. Mouse's eyes sparkled with excitement. The park reminded her of her home in the country. "Oh, could we look for a new tree? When the babies arrive, I want them to live here, where there are plenty of trees and grass." "Good idea, Mrs. Mouse. First, let's hitch a ride on a carriage," said Mr. Mouse. As they did, snowflakes the size of mouse ears began to fall. On their next stroll between 2 buildings, they saw a great star swinging from among the real stars in the midnight sky. Hundreds of little white lights twinkled as it swayed in the gentle evening breeze. The star led them to a building with a tall steeple adorned with a cross on top. The stone exterior was carved as delicately as lace. "I think we should go in here," said Mrs. Mouse. "The babies are coming. We don't have time to get back to the tree." The door was open enough for small mice to enter. Inside, the glow of 1,000 candles filled the room. "Let's not go in there, dear. Too many people," said Mr. Mouse. He remembered a manger scene in the churchyard. "Come with me. I know where to go," he said. He led Mrs. Mouse to the soft bed of straw. She laid her head against his chest, and he pulled the straw over them. Then he wrapped his arms around her, peeking at the real star that winked overhead. That night, 3 baby mice were born in the churchyard, in the manger. "Merry Christmas," said a small dog to the mice. "Don't be afraid. Don't you know tonight is Christmas Eve? That means there is peace and goodwill between all animals. I've brought you a present," he said, dropping half a donut into the straw. Later that same evening, a squirrel perched on the manger above the mice. "Merry Christmas," he said, after dropping a peanut he was holding. "It's for you." A striped cat was attracted to the movement in the straw. "Do not be afraid," she said to the mice. "I come with peace in my heart and a chestnut for you." That Christmas Eve, Mr. and Mrs. Mouse were truly blessed. They were surrounded by love, comfort, and their new babies. The very next evening, Mr. and Mrs. Mouse bundled up the babies against the cold and, creeping cautiously, hurried back to their home in Rockefeller Center. The warmth from the rosy glow of the Christmas lights spread through their little home. Cozy days and nights came and went as they took care of their new family. Then one morning, peace and harmony came to an end. They peeked out to see the workmen untangling the long strands of lights. Christmas balls were unhooked, as happens to Christmas trees. This one was coming down. "What do we do now?" exclaimed Mrs. Mouse. "It's too late to climb down the tree, dear. Just hang on," called Mr. Mouse. As the Mouse family clutched their babies, the tree was neatly laid onto the flatbed truck. Through the city they went as the car horns beeped and the gears on the truck rumbled, shifted, and purred. Soon they were back in the countryside where they had come from. The little field mice left their tree that day and searched for a new home. They came across an old barn, and up in the rafters, amid old chairs and trunks, and much to Mrs. Mouse's delight, they found a dollhouse. They filled one room with seeds and nuts, and another room with the babies. And every Christmas Eve, they tell their children the story of how the mice from the country spent Christmas away in a manger in New York City. All right. So now we have The Night Before Christmas by Clement C. Moore. "'Twas the night before Christmas when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mamma in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave a luster of midday to objects below, when what to my wandering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick I knew in a moment it must be Saint Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner, on Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, all. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed in all fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples how merry, his cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry, His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke had encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump and a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying a finger aside of his nose and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaimed ere drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night." Oh, that's so nice. Well, I think we have time for our last story. One Winter's Night by Leo and Diane Dillon. Martha was lost. It was bitter cold. Snow was beginning to fall. It was too late in the year for a young cow to be out alone, especially when she was pregnant. Do you see over here? I think there's a companion story happening here. The snow hissed like sand across the frozen fields. It beat against Martha's sides. It blew in squalls out of the darkened air. Martha's coat had grown in shaggy and thick against the winter, but she shivered anyway. She knew her time was near. She had to find her way back to warmth and safety. Then slowly the clouds blew off. The snow stopped. Stars appeared in the sky. A single star burned brightly in the eastern horizon, and Martha followed it, her bell chiming in the cold wind, dong dong. She passed 3 deer foraging at the edge of the forest. She passed a fox, its red coat scarlet whisk against the snow. Slowly Martha crossed the fields, the clear round O of her bell, a small sigh in the wind, dong dong. I see 2 travelers are finding a barn too. Now Martha had found a path through the stubble. She had to be careful not to slip on the frozen mud. Below her she saw a farm. She thought of a barn, the warmth of a manger, the sound of people. But as Martha descended the hill she was puzzled. She saw no dog, no light from the windows, no smoke from the chimneys. She heard only the whistle of the wind, the slap of a loose porch door. Martha stood in the front yard and lowed at the empty house, but no one answered. An upturned pail lay frozen by the steps. She walked to the barn, but the door was closed. She pushed against it with her nose, but no one was there to help. Martha stepped over the frozen wagon ruts, and her bell made a hollow sound in the wind, dong dong. Night had come. The wind keened in the frozen branches. The star she followed burned brighter than others, like a single jet of flame above the horizon. Martha could see the tracks of wild animals in the frozen snow, squirrels, raccoons, the small birds of the air, but nowhere the familiar prints of farm animals. It was as if the earth had been abandoned. She saw a small shed at the end of the field. It stood on the crest of a hill. Snow glittered on the black branches around the shelter. The light from the star gleamed like silver on the frozen white. Martha pushed with her nose against the door of the shed. She smelled the familiar odor of warmth and hay. A light burned. A donkey stirred in a stall. Martha smelled the odor of humans. She knew that they would help her and her baby. "Who's there?" A man rose from where he had been sitting on the hay next to a young woman. He wore a full beard and a woolen coat. "Look," the man frowned, "a young cow, and she's pregnant, just like you." "Go to her," the young woman said. Her hair was dark, and she looked at the man out of large, dark eyes. He was dressed simply, with a scarf over her head against the cold, but even in the hay she was radiant. "What are you doing out alone on a night like this?" the man said, approaching Martha. "And ready to give birth. Couldn't you find any place else to go?" He stroked her, leading her forward as he spoke. Her bell made a pleasant swaying sound as she walked, dong dong. The man led Martha into the space by the donkey. He brought her hay and settled her down, out in the cold night, just like us. Martha munched the hay, inhaled the pleasant smell of the donkey. The sound of the man's voice reassured her. The cold blew into the stall. Through the open window Martha saw the night. She saw the snow. She saw the glitter of the distant star. Now Martha felt the heavy pang of birth. She opened her mouth and lowed. She had never given birth before, and she was afraid. There, there, the man said as he stroked her. There is nothing to fear. Everything will be all right. Martha's eyes rolled, but the words of the man comforted her. Joseph, the young woman called from where she lay by the manger. Come if you can. Come quick. Outside, the wind shook the trees. The forest moaned. The branches gave a crackling sound like the report of a gun. The star in the east gleamed in the ragged branches of the pines. In the shed, Martha panted long and hard. All was blackness, darkest night. The winds fell from the four corners and shook the earth. Only the ice fire of the stars, distant and brilliant, kept watch in the darkness. And then finally there was a small cry. It is over, the woman's voice said. Yes, the man said, and just beginning. Martha lowed. Goodness, he exclaimed, the young cow. The man hurried to the stall. Martha lay exhausted, her sides still panting, and beside her, just beginning to stand on spindly legs, a beautiful calf. Is she all right? The woman called from where she lay with her son. She's fine, the man answered. Martha was tired, but her baby was butting against her, already searching for milk. She licked the calf with her large, rough tongue. The man paused by the open window. Outside, the sky was black, but the stars still burned in the heavens. The light from the eastern star glowed on the falling snow. Well now, two glorious babies on one winter's night, the man said, and he smiled at Mary beside him. So, a little bit of the Joseph and Mary Bethlehem story. And we had a Bethlehem star, a Christmas star this week, and I didn't get to see it except for in pictures where people didn't have clouds. We had clouds, so I didn't get to see it in person, but the pictures were beautiful. So I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas. Make sure you go to bed early and leave Santa his cookies and milk and the reindeer their carrots and apples. And I hope that you just enjoy having a safe, healthy, happy holiday with your family. Take care. I'll see you next week. Bye.